Walk in here.
Yeah.
Some people come to Portugal for the historic cobblestone little towns and the medieval castles. Others come for the coastline and the natural beauty. But I came for the sardines. I convinced my two Portuguese-speaking friends to join me, and we explored Portugal in the best way possible, by bike. We started in the capital, Lisbon. Natalie and Bobby had both been there several times, so they gave me a guided tour. We explored the city and took a trip to nearby Sintra to soak up all the culture and history, along with the local food and drink.
Cheers. It's pretty easy.
We started our ride in the town of Faro, on the south coast of the country. Our first day of riding took us along the shore to a town called Tavira. We followed a bike path that took us past salt marshes and wetlands. There were flamingos walking around in the water. We also briefly connected with Eurovelo 1, the Atlantic coast route. We kinda sped through Tavira, and the next day we were back on the road. Two days into the trip and we've already gone feral. Here we are eating almonds next to an abandoned windmill. The second day of the ride took us north through the hills of Algarve towards the Guadiana River and Portugal's border with Spain. Algarve is known to be the most sparsely populated region in Portugal, and we didn't see a lot of people in the towns that we passed. We were treated to this view as we approached Alcoutim during golden hour. Alcoutim is across the river from the Spanish town of Sanlúcar. We heard church bells chime at different times since Spain is an hour behind Portugal. You can actually zip line between the two countries and take a short boat ride back. Both towns have prominent castles, and we ended up coming across a total of 3 in one day. We would have gladly spent more time in Alcoutim. The town is beautiful and has a relaxing, laid-back pace of life. After Alcoutim, we set off northwest back in the direction of Lisbon. We crossed Algarve's border with Alentejo, where we spent the majority of the rest of the trip. Alentejo is known as Portugal's breadbasket, and we spent many hours riding alongside farms and ranches. We stopped in the towns of Mertola, Beja, and Evora. Beja had an impressive castle and charming medieval old town with barely any tourists. Evora, on the other hand, was much more popular. It had a spectacular Roman temple right in the heart of town. We took a day off riding and took in a Portuguese Cup game, which the home team Evora won 3-0. Just outside Evora, we visited a prehistoric stone circle site. It is thought to be 2,000 years older than Stonehenge. I was surprised how well paved the roads were in remote places, where I might have expected an unpaved path. We found some unpaved paths too, just to round out the experience. The terrain in Algarve and Alentejo is hilly, but without many brutal climbs. Our typical day was around maybe 35 miles and 2,000 or so feet of elevation gain, which is plenty of time for sightseeing and long lunches. Speaking of which, the food far exceeded my expectations. We worked up a decent appetite every day and ate like kings all over the country. The octopus was some of the most tender and delicious I've ever had. Everything was fresh and well prepared. We said it was a bike tour, but really it's just an eating tour. Eating and drinking tour. I had the traditional Portuguese custard pastry almost every morning. A few times during the trip we were hungry and we miraculously found a place serving bifanas. These tiny pork sandwiches on a roll with mustard were lifesavers and cost less than $2 usually. Funny enough, I didn't actually find fresh sardines like I was expecting. Apparently it's a fairly short season for them, but we did go to a canned fish place and it was pretty amazing. We decided to go south when we were planning our trip because we saw there were non-stop rains in the north. We had a few days of extreme heat, so we stocked up on ice before setting out and stuffed it into our cycling clothes, making the ride a lot more bearable. The country had been in a long drought, with many rivers and streams completely dry. These Roman bridges are supposed to be going over a stream. Now the raining starts. Eventually, the much-needed rains caught up to us, but they didn't slow us down too much, thanks in part to some sophisticated waterproofing. After Evora, we stayed in Montemor-o-Novo, a charming little hilltop town with impressive ruins. We got a terrific tip to try a restaurant on the opposite hilltop with incredible views at sunset. Afterwards, we rode to Setubal on our way back to the capital. We had coffee in an old fort overlooking the bay, then headed north. We faced some debilitating headwinds most of the day. The descents felt like flats, and the flats felt like climbing uphill. This was our last day of riding. We passed through some busy suburban areas as we approached Lisbon. A few miles before arriving at the river to take the ferry across, We rode through a park completely filled with pine trees and sand. Amazingly, we all maintained our traction and it was actually kind of a blast. The last couple of days were spent the same way they started, eating and drinking and walking around Lisbon. I have a sneaking suspicion I'll be back at some point. Thanks for watching.